You know, we see one universe around us. Literally, sort of in this room, we see a universe, but then when we look out with our telescopes, we can only see so far. Increasingly, a lot of theoretical physicists are imagining that it's not just the universe we see, that there's other places, either outside what we can see or sort of hidden from us, right next to us, different universes all by themselves that add up to something that we would call the multiverse.
When you have the alternate reality in a show, you basically can turn the world of that show upside down.
It's a big what if. It's what will this character do in this situation that you can't do otherwise?
A lot of scientists have thought that not only the world around us could possibly exist, but there could be a whole nother reality that in some ways would be very similar to ours, but branched off sometime in the past. So you can imagine that either literally next to us in space, or perhaps in a more abstract existing sense, there were two realities that were the same for a long time in history, and then they diverged at some point. And this is very, very real science. This is not crazy and speculative. It's not necessarily true, but a lot of very respectable scientists believe that these alternate realities actually exist.
You know, the cool thing about alternate realities is you can sort of have these what-if moments, like what if the Nazis had won the war? What if they never invented penicillin?
It gives you an opportunity to explore ideas that don't fit into the normal continuity of an established fictional universe.
The value of an alternate reality story is about choices.
It gives you a lot more room for drama because suddenly the character is acting more realistic because he's flawed. He's doing things that he shouldn't do.
It's like turning the facets of a stone and looking at it from different angles. That looking at it from one way, how would this character behave? But if you were in a different set of circumstances, you just sort of turn it a little bit and you get a totally different perspective on it.
And it's not once and for all, right? You can always sort of take it back because you have the first reality there. So it's a wonderful fictional device that in some sense is inspired by ideas from science.
You can kill people and it won't have any consequence because it didn't happen in our universe. You can have them behave in a manner that they're not supposed to.
What if Batman didn't have this moral code that prevented him from killing? What if he finally took care of the Joker once and for all? And the possibilities and the variations on that are endless.
Right now, we don't have evidence for any alternate reality, but there's different theoretical ways that you could sort of conceptualize what it would mean. Quantum mechanics says that there's no such thing as the position of a particle. Rather, when you look at the particle, there's different possible places it could be. All the different possible places that you could have seen it become real in different realities. And so every time something happens, every time some quantum observation is made, a whole new reality comes into existence.
I think audiences sort of love the idea of the butterfly effect, the idea of one domino falling and seeing all the other ones go down.
We have a tendency to want to look back and say, if I just done this one thing different, what would have happened? And it's a chance to sort of like go back and have a do-over.
You have a lot more room for irony and pathos because some insignificant thing that shouldn't have mattered and normally wouldn't matter in your world suddenly has created this whole alternate universe.
It captures imagination, and all people can relate to this.
And the great thing about physics is it suggests that that could be real, that alternate possibility, that different history of our universe could actually exist somewhere.
Describing the DC Comics multiverse is so hard.
Pragmatically, DC just started buying up other comic book companies and acquiring these other heroes. And they didn't know really how to fit them into their continuity. So every time they basically bought out another company, that created a universe for them.
It was huge, unwieldy. Writers were probably having trouble trying to track what universe was what and what happened when.
You know, Shazam lived on Earth S, the quality characters, they live on a separate Earth. And it spiraled out of control for a while, and that's what led to Crisis on Infinite Earths, because they needed to condense all these characters into one universe.
DC in 1985 decided to have this Crisis on Infinite Earths and really simplify and mainstream their universe by kind of pushing characters together, getting rid of excess versions of characters, and sort of reestablishing a solid continuity. And it was this epic event in which we saw great heroes get killed off and make the ultimate sacrifice.
Barry Allen died. Oh, and so did Supergirl. And along that, it was decided that Superboy never existed.
Explode the whole thing literally and hit the reset button and give people an opportunity to sort of start again, and for the creators to sort of streamline the universe and pick and choose the things that they thought worked best going forward.
It's interesting from the physicist's point of view that universes split apart from each other, but they never join together. So in the DC Crisis on Infinite Earths, they went the other way a little bit. They sort of joined the universes back together. We physicists don't know how to do that, so we're a little bit jealous of the comic writers who can make these things happen with the stroke of a pen.
A lot of times in the multiverse stories, we see our heroes battling darker versions of themselves.
It seems to very often be the case that the alternate reality is the evil one, where the people who we know and love that are our heroes are now doing bad things.
I think we like to see characters square off with themselves because, you know, within each of us you have that internal struggle of good versus evil, and in those type of stories you actually get to see it manifested physically.
Fans love to see heroes punch an evil version of themselves in the face. It's inherently compelling, and part of it is that a lot of fans have always thought, if Superman were like super evil and was willing to kill people, he would totally kick his own ass.
We're fascinated by the bad boy version of ourselves, and that's always what the alternate reality is like. The alternate reality is never people like our heroes, but better.
This idea of the sort of doppelganger, the dark side of yourself, is something that people wrestle with inside themselves.
You know, we're all told to be good and decent human beings all the time, but inside of all of us, there's this part of us that wants to be bad.
There's that weird symmetry of like, well, what would happen if the Flash had to run against his evil self? Who would be faster? The Flash that's willing to, you know, run over a bunch of babies to get to the final destination, or the Flash who's going to gently swaddle them and put them in incubators on the way to the finish line?
You know, idealistically, the good side wins, but, you know, it's probably more interesting when the bad side wins, or the good side has to go bad in order to win.
To me, those stories aren't interesting unless you find out why the guys are bad. And we did that in Better World.
Initially, Better World was actually just going to be a crime syndicate story. And for some reason, the characters weren't available to us to use, and so we were in a bind. And as usual, when we're in a situation where we can't do something we wanted to do, we actually come up with something better.
There's something very naive about the crime syndicate. It's people with superpowers that are, you know, as strong as Superman and as powerful as Green Lantern, and they're robbing banks.
The crime syndicate just felt a little corny, and the idea of a parallel world where good is bad and bad is good just seemed too easy.
So then we latched onto the evil twin idea. What if the Justice League stepped over the line and did something that caused them to basically do evil things, but that they felt were justified? How would that play out, and what would our Justice League, how would they react?
And the way to do it was to show them at the beginning, the Justice Lords, as being just like our heroes. And then a couple small things happen and things spiral out of control.
Even this wasn't enough for you, was it? You had to have it all. Now we're on the brink of a war that could destroy the whole planet.
Could have been so perfect.
The opening of Better World is sort of a misdirection. We don't let you know where you are. We don't let you know what you're looking at.
And then there's that one moment where Superman does something completely out of character for Superman, and retaliates in a way that crosses the line. And you suddenly think, wait, what am I watching?
Because our Superman would never do such a thing. But he's also never been pushed into that position as well.
It took a lot of pressure to make Superman stop being Superman and to violate that one rule that had always been inviolate, which is, I don't kill people.
He made the choice that our Superman would never make, and that's what really set things in motion for that story.
We wanted to make sure that the audience could say, yes, I could see that happening. I could see him doing this. Because if he was just born evil, it wouldn't have been very interesting.
And then when you jump forward in time and see that the ripple effect from that has created this kind of almost fascist Justice League.
And that's what basically created the Justice Lords, when Superman changed his mind.
In physics terms, we would say the wave function of the universe split into two different pieces, one in which they're being nice guys, one in which they're, repressing the people of Earth and so forth. And that's exactly how it works within the physics. And the interesting thing is that the consequences of a tiny change can make things very, very different in the ultimate outcomes.
So without your Flash, the Justice Lords went rogue?
It wasn't quite that simple.
Hey, he was the conscience of your group, and that means I must be.
Come on, Jiminy.
We needed to come up with something that would be a shorthand for saying, how did all of the other heroes agree to go along with this? And so the death of Flash seemed like a pretty powerful way to get that across without doing a lot of explaining.
I mean, we wanted to start right at the brink and keep moving forward. And I think that to have shown Flash be killed, it would have taken another 15 minutes of story time.
I think it's more powerful that we haven't seen the Flash get killed because it allows the audience to create their own scenario.
It makes you wonder, well, did Luthor kill him? Is that what pushed Superman over the edge? And you're kind of left to wonder and ponder that, and also to see the importance of the Flash in the normal universe.
The story was not about the death of Flash, but that event having happened has repercussions with the other characters, and we were more interested in the repercussions than with the actual event itself.
I keep expecting him to come zipping in any minute.
And then say something really stupid, right?
Well, there was that.
You grabbed power, and with that power, we've made a world where no 8-year-old boy will ever lose his parents because of some punk with a gun.
The scene where the two Batmans are debating each other while they're fighting in the Batcave really lays out in very stark contrast two different points of view.
Logically, the bad Batman is more reasonable and more rational. You know, for all these people the Joker kills, you would have to say to hit Batman, look, you really should have killed this guy. How bad would it have been, if you'd killed him? And for that reason, I think that the bad Batman, who is willing to kill, is somewhat more rational, except for one thing, and that is where our Batman wins.
Mom and Dad, they'd be so proud of you. Just drive.
It's so cool as a fan to get to see a writer and a cartoon take that concept and run with it and make you think, you know what, I was wrong to think that Batman should totally lobotomize the Joker.
Why, certainly, Superman.
It's almost a little transgressive in the sense that you don't want Superman to be a bad guy in the reality that we know and love. So it allows us to see what would happen if things were just a little bit different and really appreciate that they could be very altered. And that gives you sort of a sense of cherishing the reality that you have and how delicate it can be.
We kept it very simple. It's a very simple story with a lot of deep implications, and it really kickstarts your imagination, and you can really spin off and create a lot of ideas around it.
It deals with real issues that we're dealing with currently right now in society. How much are we willing to give up in the name of security?
Can't do it, can you? I'm the last piece of your conscience.
I've done a lot of things I thought I'd never do these last 2 years.
At the time when it aired, we were going to war, a war that people were questioning, and choices had been made as a result of an event. And it kind of creates an environment where you think, well, what would the world have been if A, that hadn't happened, that event, or if we had made different choices.
Freedom can be messy, but it's also something that we hold dear to our hearts. And by having these two opposing views sort of literally battling it out here, we have a chance to sort of get people thinking.
I think it's really cool to sort of imagine these perfect heroes being pushed to a point where even they can't take it anymore.
They did what a normal person would do, given those superpowers, I think. It's much easier to explain the way they behave than it is to explain the way the traditional Justice League heroes behave, because they're selfless, they won't sacrifice anyone else's life. These guys are much more human, and I think if the fans liked it, it's because they're a little easier to relate to than our perfect superheroes. I think almost all fiction, and probably some nonfiction, are alternate reality stories.
If you have these sort of other possibilities, then writers can continue to explore that. They can continue to take great dramatic risks.
Alternate universes free creators to do anything.
This kind of exploration of the space of possibilities is something that storytellers get to do. In the real world, we have to stick with the one real world. And storytellers are going to keep taking advantage of this freedom to examine more than one world at the same time.